My name is Lisa King, and I'm from Duval County, where I serve as a state committee woman. I'm not sure of the format, if you want me to provide a brief introduction.
Well, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I have served in almost every facet of our party. I started out as an aide to an elected official, both a member of Congress and a state representative. I've been active in my DPC. I was a state officer in Young Democrats. I rechartered my Democratic Women's Club and was an officer for about 10 years. I have been an appointed local official. I've been a candidate, and I've been a delegate to the Democratic National Convention 4 times. And I am passionate about bringing change to our party to allow us to be more successful, and also to make sure that our party, all the facets of our party, look like our voters. I think we've lost our way, and we have a lot of work to do to bring us back to where we need to be. I am passionate about inclusion, and while I represented Secretary Clinton this spring, both as her North Florida lead and as a delegate, I thought that my #1 priority should be to reach out to people who were supporting Senator Sanders, because ultimately we have to come back together. And the activities that I provided, the trainings that I provided, the partnerships and service projects that we did together helped make sure that we had a great transition to after the convention. So it's that same spirit of inclusion that I try to bring to all my work with the party. And lastly, I think that the most important thing we can do as a party is be transparent. We have to follow not only the letter of our bylaws, but the spirit of our bylaws. Our voters do not trust us anymore. Our members largely don't trust each other. And that's the most important change we need to bring. Thank you.
Thank you. And welcome. Thank you for taking the time to come to this interview. I'm Beverly Neal, Chair, and to my right is Marion Williams, and to my left is Marion Williams, and to her left is Lydia Hudson. To my right is Jared Ware, and to her right is Taz Hall. And we're just happy that you took the time to come to the interview, because it's very important to us who is the chair of the party. And you've already had your 2 minutes, so we're going to begin the interview.
Okay.
So my first question is, what sets you apart from other candidates that would garner the support of the DPCI?
Well, I think that the fact that I'm a grassroots activist, I believe that the Florida Democratic Party at its heart is a grassroots organization. I think some of the other candidates may have a different point of view about the party, what it is at its heart, and the way that it should behave, and who its leader should be. I'm a strong believer in servant leadership. As a former chairman of Jacksonville's Planning Commission, we would deliberate on very complicated and emotional issues to do with people's livelihoods and their homes. And the kind of leader that I was at that organization was that I would let all of the commissioners fully explore their questions and talk about their points of view, and I would speak last, because I thought to do anything but was to put my thumb on the scale as chairman. I think we need that kind of leadership and an organization with this kind of mission and this kind of values.
I have a question as it relates to caucuses. What is your position on the role of the caucuses?
I think caucuses are key outreach, targeted outreach to different communities of interest. I think they're a key place to focus candidate recruitment efforts. And I think I have kind of a new idea. You know, we're all discussing how we need to revise our bylaws, that our bylaws are dated and no longer serve us. One idea I'd like to explore is using bylaws revision as a way to make our state committee look more like our voters. We do a fabulous job of sending a delegation to the Democratic National Convention that looks like Florida and looks like our voters. And unfortunately, our state committee does not. And I would like to set affirmative action goals for membership in our state committee. And I think it's going to make us more successful. And I think clubs and caucuses will play key roles. Because one idea is that after we have county reorg meetings and those elections, and we see the makeup of our membership, that we then see where we are not reflecting our voters. And we go to clubs and caucuses for additional membership on the state committee to bring us into balance and reflect our voters.
Okay. What will be your financing plan to help and support caucus fundraising efforts?
Well, I remember when we used to have a strong tradition that our clubs and caucuses would have fundraising events, but the luncheon or the breakfast was a special fundraiser for caucuses, and at some point that seemed to kind of float away. I'd like to return that because I know that was a important source of funding for our clubs and caucuses. And I would like clubs and caucuses to be our partners in building our small donor program for the FDP, which ultimately will benefit clubs and caucuses as well. Allison made a great start in our small donor program. Mostly, that's through email, but we've seen through various candidates like President Obama and Senator Sanders that small donations and building those programs is possible. We're not bringing in the amount of money to state this size that we should, but I'd like to partner with clubs and caucuses in that effort because of the kind of outreach that you do in the community, and I think also you will bring better messaging to that program. I have some concerns about the messaging they use to try to solicit funds.
How would you support the existing caucuses in the infrastructure bill?
Well, as I mentioned, I guess it depends upon how you define infrastructure. I think when I think about infrastructure, I think about, well, first of all, I want to regionalize operations of the state party. I want us to go to regional operations, including regional vice chairs. I know that it's been a complaint that people don't see the chair at their EDC and their clubs and caucus meetings enough. That's been a recurring theme. And that's not meant as a criticism of Allison. After 2 weeks in the car, I can tell you, this is a very large state, and it is very difficult to be everywhere people really want to see you. And so I think regionalizing the vice chairs would help with that. But when I think of the infrastructure of our party, I think of our staff. I think we need to make sure that our staff looks like our voters. And I also think that we need to use that spirit to build a core of campaign staff that look like our voters as well. We need to make a greater effort to develop young people who are interested in working in campaigns and making sure they have the training and tools and the opportunities to be involved in campaigns and get paid to do campaign work. And for me, that's an important infrastructure of our party, as well as bringing that same spirit to candidate recruitment, particularly around young people and development of candidates.
The FDP bylaws have been in effect for the last 4 administrations with only very minor changes. Will you be open to making changes? If so, what will they be?
Well, I am open to making changes. That's one of the first acts that I want to do, is getting the Rules Committee to re-examine the bylaws. However, I want to go about it in a different way than we did it 2 years ago. I think that they need to receive a lot of testimony and input from all members of the committee, all partner organizations, all organizations that have values that align with ours, and looking at the issues of way to vote, eligibility for who to run for chair, because it's been a real distraction, those issues in this past election. Ideas like having an affirmative action plan for the state committee. But again, because of the kind of leader that I am, it's not really important what I think we need to do in terms of revising the bylaws. I want to return that power to the state committee. Our organization has been very top-down in decision-making for way too long. Very few people make most of the important decisions. And I think that's part of the reason why we are unsuccessful in elections. is because we have all kinds of blind spots, because we have very few people who are reviewing facts and making decisions for us.
Another part to this question. Do you feel that we should increase the number of state committee men and women and get rid of that weighted vote? Like, for example, in my county, I have 22 weighted votes, and if they decide to, like you said, a total committee, total input, give us 5 state committee men and women as opposed to 22 weighted votes. And if I'm in Miami-Dade, I got 89, 100 and something plus, I might get 15. What do you think about that?
Well, it is an important balance to strike. For example, Duval County had, under the old system, 48 weighted votes, and we would go down to 12. There's a lot of considerations. The expense of that many people attending state meetings. The idea that the state committee would get so much larger and would we really be able to make policy. Under the current system, where it's top down, it probably wouldn't make any difference. In a situation where we're returning authority to the state committee, it could make a lot of difference. And you know, the idea of the weighted vote is a sound one from the standpoint that it reflects the number of Democrats in the county and their performance on behalf of our tickets. So I've talked to the folks that drafted that proposal 2 years ago. They agree that they think it may make the committee too large. I certainly think that expanding membership will help us be a more diverse committee. And I also think that having the chair and the vice chair as being part of the team that represents the county is a good idea. So I'm willing to explore all those ideas, but I don't have a definite, this is what we should do.
But you're open.
I'm very open to all those ideas.
What would your organizational chart look like if you were chair?
Well, after my plans are to work on bylaws review and to explore this idea of regionalization and what that means in terms of leadership. So potentially 5 vice chairs, all representing different regions of our state. In terms of staffing, after we finish these bylaws revisions, I want to go into a strategic planning process. We really haven't had one of those in decades or more. And I want it to be a real strategic planning process involving the entire state committee. And again, all those partnering organizations, our clubs and caucuses. And included in that will be an analysis of every county's needs, of every clubs and caucuses needs. And that will determine what our staffing needs are and where the staffing resources would be. So a vice chair in a certain region may have different staff kind of serving that region than in another based on its needs.
As part of that strategic planning process, when you say you would do an analysis, is that an analysis done by an outside source? Is that an internal audit? Is that something that's made by recommendations from the individual local DECs? What does that analysis look like to you?
That's a very good question. I think one thing we need to do is foster DECs, knowledge bases in each DEC. And so what I'd like to do is have outside help in designing kind of a self-analysis, a self-audit, so that DECs would know what kind of information is needed to really determine what their needs are, but also be open to whatever DECs, what information they want to provide in terms of what their needs are. So that we would have kind of an apples-to-apples comparison of all of our counties and have something that's consistent, but also that be a self-audit. Audit is kind of a scary word to a lot of people, right? So it's not that you've done a bad job and we're going to figure out what's wrong with you. It's we want to just take an interior look and see what we could be doing better. See where our opportunities are that maybe we're not taking advantage of because we don't have the right resources in that county. It'll be that kind of spirit.
The question I have as an extension of that particular question is that you have the apples-to-apples comparison that you use as an analogy. But many times when you have an apples-to-apples comparison, as we have with our school systems, you have certain intangibles that are there, such as enthusiasm gap. You may have performance gap. You may have so those types of things. How would the internal analysis, the apples-to-apples analogy, how would that address those intangibles?
Well, you know, and that's why having kind of a team to design that instrument of how we're going to measure is so important, because all these ideas are great. Because enthusiasm is an important thing. I was just with Palm Beach County last night, and it was so inspiring because they are a large, vibrant, very fired up DEC. Of course, they're a big blue county, and I'm from the smallest purple county, smallest of the big counties and it's purple. And so the feeling is very different. And I'm probably not answering your question directly, but because it's, you know, I don't have on a shelf, this is what our strategic plan is going to be.
Sure, you just recognize that it's there, that's fine.
Yeah, and I have a really open and curious mind. And I am happy to recognize that sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And there are professionals that can provide a lot of guidance, but I think there's a lot of wisdom within our committee, and there's a lot of wisdom within our activist core of this organization to help us pull together what that would look like. But intangibles are important to me because they do so much of why our candidates get elected is in that intangible, right? That you can't measure. And it's that special secret sauce that inspires people. And that's why people vote nowadays, because people have such a bad attitude about their government being able to change their lives. So that's a very important thing that we need to look at within each DEC. So thank you for that question. Very thoughtful.
One question, I'm sorry. It's long-winded.
That's fine. That's why these are great with their conversations.
Number
Yeah.
4 about the infrastructure for the local caucuses. And I appreciate the fact that you said you'd like to energize the young, energize volunteers, and have paid staffers who come into communities and then be a support staff. But would you be willing to influx capital into these caucuses, environmental, progressive, democratic movements?
I mean, I know that some of these caucuses, smaller caucuses really struggle. You know, the capital is difficult for them. I am passionate about training people, particularly in fundraising, because unfortunately, politics a lot about us being able to be successful is about money, right? And the way the FDP is designed right now, all that responsibility falls on the chair's shoulders. And while I was a candidate for public office, and I wasn't really sure that I was going to be successful in raising money, and I knew it was an important metric, and I set goals for myself that I was going to raise $25,000 in my first month, and my husband was just not convinced that could happen, and I met my goal. I received a lot of training, and I received a lot of support from people who were experienced fundraisers. I want to bring that same spirit of partnership to fundraising with the caucuses. So it will be a partnership that we will work together to raise money, that some of that capital will come right from the FDP, but it will be also along with training so that, you know, it's the whole, we want to train people, we don't want to just give people fish, we want to train people, you know, teach people how to
But
fish.
in that sense, certain communities it's easier to raise money
Certainly.
than in others. And in the
Certainly.
communities where we most need people to be inspired to vote, we most need people to be educated, where the resources are most needed. Generally speaking, those are the places where it's the most difficult,
Absolutely.
even with training to raise money. You can't squeeze blood out of turnips.
As a term, yes. Well, and you know, one of the ideas I've had is using fundraising as a training opportunity, right? Because one of the places that I said I'd like to look for candidates is in the caucuses. So there are going to be people within your organizations that are just, you know, naturals, that you're going to, this guy or lady will be a great candidate, and they're going to need to learn to raise money. So maybe their first steps are learning how to raise money for the caucus. And, you know, being a candidate, you're going to raise money from your own friends, your own community. You're going to raise money from people who frankly have some kind of interest that they think you might be able to assist them. And then you're going to raise money also from people who really believe in the greater good and believe that you can make change. We need to define those 3 groups of potential targets for each club and caucus, because there are folks who are going to be interested in each of our kind of mission areas of our clubs and caucuses in their mission, even if there's no kind of short-term return or something in it for them. But I do understand what you're saying, that It's easier to raise money for some things than others.
Sure.
This will be the last question.
In 2 words, what is the FDP's role for the Democratic Black Caucus, or in the Democratic Black Caucus success?
Authentic relationship. So did you get to explain my 2 words? Well, I think that part of the reason why the party has really struggled is that we kind of parachute into communities like 60, 90 days before an election and are like, hi, we're here, don't you want to vote for us? Because we all agree on the same things, right? And that is not an authentic relationship. An authentic relationship is something that happens all the time, year-round, and not just when we need something. We need to sit with our partners and listen. And that's part of this conversion from bottom up, right? Because our messaging comes from the top down. It's general. It's not authentic. It doesn't really speak to people. It doesn't move people. If we have an authentic relationship with the communities that we serve, we are going to have better messaging because we're really going to understand what people need and what people want. And that's part of how we've lost our way, is this whole parachute in and say, yeah, I'm your friend, remember? That's not a real friendship. That's not a real relationship.
Thank you so much, and it's been most enjoyable. And I'm sure people, got a better insight as to who you are and what your relationship will be to the Black Caucus. And that's the purpose of the interviews, to see what type of relationship you have going forward. And I wish you luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.